where should we start working from to give the kind of gain or to achieve the kind of result that is expected of us to literally reduce the incident of terrorism in our country? This is just a general broad question, General.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much for that question. The starting point, of course, is from a hybrid perspective. Hybrid in the sense that not only do we encourage the troops, who are engaged in the kinetic aspect of the operation, but to also, look at other aspects which, in general terms are referred to as non-kinetic, which, of course, essentially hovers around good governance, and then also taking steps to ensure that the populace, understand the nuances associated with the challenges that we currently face. And that's why, for me as a person, anytime we hear individuals who make very inciting comments, I think that such people should be picked up immediately. And that's why I'm glad that even though the statement made by Senator Fadaunsi is a political one, but I think that it also borders on incitement to violence. And I think the police has done the right thing by inviting him, and it should be questioned even beyond that. Added to that, of course, is the Sheikh in Kano, Sheikh Jingir, who also made some comments, which, of course, I believe is also inciting, that could also add to the bouquet of threats that we have. He also should be arrested. And I also believe that the various comments that someone like Gumi has been making also demands, that he be, called, not just to order, but of course, invited and arrested, and for them to, in order to, show, to let the, populace know that there's nobody who is above the law. And then when you say things that are not right, you should be called in to answer. And I think if we do that, then of course it will give some form of advantage, or if you like, some form of motivation to the defense and security agencies, especially, the police, the DSS, and of course the military. And then, of course, those criminals in their various hideouts will also know that it's no longer business as usual, because you must understand that the criminals who may be behind the veil are also looking at those of us that are in the open. What do we say? How does it align with, the ideology, or if you like, their thinking? And so when they hear such comments from these individuals that I've just mentioned, it motivates them. It gives them the impression that, look, so we are on the right course. We are not acting, against the wishes of the people. So they think that they are getting support in that sense. So for me, in the direct answer to your question, is that we should have a hybrid approach. While sustaining, the kinetic operations, we must also, ensure that these other aspects are taken care of, wherein, those who offend the law are called question. And of course, for us to also ensure that issues that have to do with good governance, making provisions for unemployment to reduce, and also taking steps to ensure that the economic hardship that is currently, we are facing in the country is also reduced. So if you like, the combination of all these, what I believe will be able to give us some respite. And so once that is sustained, and over a period, you realize that we will no longer be hearing of killings and violence on a daily basis, that life begins to get better and better as we go by.
Well, General, fantastic presentation, again, referring to your presentation at on the states of the nation, and as well as issues around the national emergency declared on insecurity. I think it's been over a year, almost a year, since that was declared, somewhere around November 2025. There are those who would question, beyond the president's words of declaring a state of emergency on national security or insecurity, what has changed or what has happened, which you captured in your presentation. for someone who was commander of Operation Lafia Dole, which is now Operation Hedin Kai, what makes the security of Nigeria really, really complex and complicated? Because Nigerians are always asking, why is it easier? I mean, there was a time where, for instance, some Americans were, I think, kidnapped, and it took about maybe 7 or 9 American soldiers to come into the country, got the job done, and they left. But in this country, people are held in captivity 56 days in Orire, for instance. In Borno, Goza, we hear that they've been there now, headed for maybe 90 days. In fact, Ali Ndume has been crying for quite some time, mentioning about 5 areas in Borno State where people have been kidnapped and they're still in captivity. In fact, we understand that there are places, maybe you can also confirm that for us, General, in Nigeria, where the people fear the bandits more than they fear the Nigerian army or the police. So what makes our own security architecture here is so complex and complicated that it's so much for people to comprehend?
All right, let me thank you for
General Kelly.
Question. And even though I've made representations in the past,
General Kelly,
answer to this, I think it bears repetition here. No doubt, we have capacity challenges. There's no doubt about it. But I usually say that Rome was not built in a day. And let me also reiterate what I started with, which is that coming to this station to speak to issues is from the position of knowledge and understanding as to how things work, how things are, and how things work. Now, you see, when there is nobody, especially speaking for the defense and security, that is the military, the police, and of course other intelligence services, there is no officer of any of these establishments that will go to sleep when there are issues. Now, for the military itself, we have had series of training, series of meetings, series of conferences, and seminar in order to look at some of these issues. Now, there is a gap, and that gap is not, it might not be right for me to come to television and to begin to read them out. All I can say is that, quite a lot still needs to be done, and I think that the representation which I made that day is also, which you referenced, is also what I believe that, is the issue. Many of the challenges, of course, are already being, I would say they are known to government, and they are already working at it. And I think this must have informed the President Commander-in-Chief recently making the intervention regarding the army, which of course I believe is also the first step in the very long journey on reprofessionalizing the armed forces. So ditto for the police, ditto for the DSS and other agencies. And don't also forget that the financial implication for some of these interventions is not something that is small. And if I may reference, what you said regarding the issue with the American citizen who was kidnapped, and then of course there were some forces that came in to rescue them. You should also ask yourself currently what the issues are with the US and Iran. And let me also perhaps mention that if you bring side by side the budget that the US spends for their military, for their defense and security, relative to ours, certainly, you can't compare them. So that does not imply that we must do as the US. It is always necessary for you to be able to assess what you can, what is possible, and then for you to build that capacity over time. And I think that that's exactly what is being done. I believe that the state of emergency ought to have been, have taken greater effect. Greater effect in the sense that we need to understand what is involved and what needs to, be stepped down in terms of, governance, or if you like, in terms of budgeting for other areas of governance, and that must be shifted to the security angle, so that we can have greater speed of accomplishment of tasks that we have. But that we have not seen. The reason for it, like I said, I'm not in government. I said it before. I'm not in government, so I may not know the details of it. But all I can tell you that there is no responsible government or responsible military leadership, or if you like, defense and security leadership, that knows that enough is not being done within the matrix of what holds within the economy, that he himself will not speak out. So that that the space may appear to be very slow does not imply that action is not being done. We are hoping that as the economy improves, and then of course our capacity building improves, that we'll be able to address issues within the reasonable time frame that results are expected. So for me, this is what I can say in that regard. But I want to stress that even though there's a lot of upbeat regarding the expansion of the army, for example, that it is not something that is like we have gone to the shelf to pick up, what to require. No, it is going to take a very long time before we see the impact of what that, change in force posture, what it is.